Hello and welcome to the Care for the Family podcast with me, Mark Chester, Stephen Hayes.
All right, Mark.
And Robin Vincent.
Hi, Mark.
Robin is our special guest today, and he's also the chief exec of Care for the Family, so we're on our best behaviour today, aren't we, Stephen?
You certainly probably will be.
And this is the Dad Cave, where we discuss fatherhood in its varying forms and unpack some of the things that often just don't get talked about. So, Robin, welcome to the Dad Cave. It's really good to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so in terms of family context, I've been married to Hannah now coming up to 23 years in December. And my son, Jake, is 19 and my daughter is 20. She's called Darby. And they're both away in different parts of the UK studying at the moment. So they have, in effect, left home, or certainly a big way to leaving home.
Excellent. Well, it's brilliant to have you here today. So thanks for joining us in the Dad Cave. And we always start off these podcasts by telling odd dad jokes. And Stephen and I will go first. We'll build up to your dad joke, Robin, because we know it's going to be the best one. Just as a warning to you, Stephen has started to make up his own dad jokes.
This isn't.
Isn't it? Is
No.
this not one of them? No, because actually, I mean, Stephen is a funny guy, isn't he? I've always said he's one of the funniest guys I know. But
I love just how tight-lipped.
Robin's not agreeing with me.
I just don't think that's a really good thing to say to Stephen too many times. I don't think it.
Well,
I think
it depends on
Yeah.
how funny how. It's like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, like funny how.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll take it. I think
you
I'll
are
take it
fair.
in the spirit in which I think you meant it.
And his jokes are sometimes very good, but often sometimes you just can't understand what he's going on about. Alan Turing would find it difficult to decipher some of Stephen's jokes sometimes. So let's see what he's got today anyway. Stephen, over to you.
I accidentally passed my wife a glue stick instead of lip balm. She's still not talking to me.
Oh, very good.
That is I like that one actually. Yeah, I do like that one.
All right.
That was more of a laugh than a groan. So
Very good.
It's better than the one I've got, to be honest. This is a classic dad joke. So why can't a nose be 12 inches long?
Don't know, why can't a nose be 12 inches long?
Because it would be a foot. Bum bum.
Oh,
Yeah, no, terrible.
yeah.
Robin, come on, rescue us.
Okay, well, I was going to do a joke on construction, but I'm still working on it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And I've got another one actually,
Oh.
just to say, obviously in my role at Care for the Family, got the opportunity to meet Tim Vine, which was a bit of a highlight in my time at Care for the Family. And this is my favourite Tim Vine joke. And I asked him once backstage whether he'd just do the joke for me personally. So I've got this live
audience of one.
Audience of one. So it's this. Last year I went on a holiday of a lifetime. I'm not doing that again.
Very good.
There you go.
Oh, brilliant.
There you go.
Tim.
Brilliant. Yeah, what an
If you're watching,
experience.
Tim, thanks for that.
Yeah, best joke.
Or listening.
Okay, so the topic we're tackling today is letting go of our children. So, Robin, you've mentioned already, you've got 2 children, and tell us, when they left home, how did it feel? What was it like having an empty nest?
Yeah. Okay, so my daughter left home, or moved out of home as it were, first. I don't know if they think they've left yet. I think they probably have. She moved out, and in many ways, when Darby moved out, it didn't feel so huge. Maybe just with Jake still around, it just didn't feel so huge. Darby was ready to go. It felt that. She would probably agree with me there. She was eager to go. So that was pretty straightforward. When Jake left home, or moved out, as it were, and he went to university, it was, again, we were preparing for it, and I was in a bit of denial about it. I can remember driving back from when we dropped him off. Hannah said, I feel a little bit of my heart has been left in Exeter. So she was feeling it on the way home. I didn't really feel too emotional until I got home and I went up to his bedroom.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it really took me by surprise, the feeling that I had in his bedroom of just loss, a little bit of aching, really. I mean, it was perspective on it all, of course, but I definitely felt it. And I came downstairs and I said to Hannah, I just don't go into your son's bedroom after you've dropped him off, as it were. And then I did cry a bit then. But I tried to get a grip of it, I suppose, for me at that point. Not really sure what I was going to go with it, apart from feel it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Did it? So Darby, did she go to uni, or was it just?
Yeah, so Darby went to university as well. But I think a lot of, the experiences that we have of whether they go to university or, I don't think it's necessarily about them leaving home. I think it's about them becoming emotionally independent, as well as they might be physically independent or physically left. So I think I think it's not necessarily just about them all going to university. It could be if they get their first job. I think their feelings can be the same, or suddenly like, oh, they've gone. So it's not the same.
So just for future reference, if my girls go off to university, what should I do in the immediate aftermath? Don't go in their room.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? Like I said, with Darby, which is funny if she's listening to this, but I think it would be accurate to say she was ready to go, and we knew she was ready to go. So there was a kind of like, once we knew she was settled, once we knew she was settled wherever she was going to be, we were in a pretty good place about that. Yeah, that final one though, probably don't go in the room. But then again, you've got to confront the emotional realities, haven't you? So just know what you're going into. And it took me by surprise.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think when you get home with a new baby and you arrive home, and we've talked about this before, Stephen, and you're home from the hospital, you put the baby in the middle of the room, it's like, whoa, what do we do now? And it's the same kind of feeling, isn't it? Once, because my kids are in their 20s and have both left home. It's the same kind of feeling, I think, when you go back to the house after you've let them go is, well, what do we do now? And I'm just wondering, was the differences between you and Hannah, your wife Hannah, in how you sort of felt and approached that time?
Yeah, most definitely. Right. When we dropped Jake off, there was a huge queue of traffic back to his little room we were leaving him. And so I just thought, well, there's no point. We're only going to drive him down there and drop him off now. We've done all the goodbye stuff. So I said, look, we'll just pull over here and drop him off here, which I think was a bit of a shock to her. And
cold.
Quite cold in one sense. So we were hugging him on some random street to say goodbye. So she was already feeling it and holding it together. And as I say, on the way home, she was feeling it in a really very real way. Whereas, of course, for me, I didn't. But I think as well, we were both, we'd been in our minds, and this being you can prepare for it a lot longer. In many ways, it's a sudden thing, but in other ways, it does slowly creep up on you. We've had for a number of years, we've had a memory jar in our house every year that we put memories in throughout the year. And then at New Year's, we'd get it all out over the table, and we'd look back on all the little memories we had. Well, I can remember it must have been the year before Darby left, or the year Darby left, the memory jar was still sitting there at the end of January, untouched, because our kids had sort of emotionally taken a step forward away from us. So you suddenly realise, oh, that's gone. And I think it creeps up on you. It doesn't. It shuts pretty quickly when it does. It's a funny thing.
I've always grown up with dogs, and it's not the same, obviously. But like every time I've had a dog,
comment, Steve. Well done.
Every time
I'm glad I employed you, Kevin, family. You've really got a hang of it.
Every time I've had a dog, and they've had to be put down, you come home and like the basket's still there. And it's I imagine that pang is probably something that's so intrinsically related to like a bedroom. It's like it all happened in here. We played games in here. We wrestled in here. All that stuff. And then suddenly it's like. So I think I've said this on the podcast before. But getting back home, if like one of my parents has got the dog, and it's like the house doesn't have a heartbeat anymore. I imagine the bedroom's probably like. It's probably a similar vibe. I mean, Mark, you've done it as well. What were your emotions?
Yeah, do you know, leading up to it, I'm not sure I was fully prepared for it in a way. I don't know whether it's different being a bloke, whether you just sort of don't expect the sort of emotional impact of letting go so much. But yeah, I mean, I found it a real struggle, to be honest. Letting go is one of the things I've found the most challenging, I think, over the years, is just letting go of them. But
who went first?
So Meg left home first. So she went off to, in her first year after school, she went off to India and lived in India for 6 months. She was doing some work over there. That was, I can remember the emotional impact that she just left school, and we went to Heathrow to let her go. And
so that's not a 3-hour drive. Like that's.
It was. I can remember and I didn't expect expect it, but I can almost like a panic attack in the airport where I had to just go into the toilets and gather myself because I just wasn't ready for this, really. It was.
Did you have social media then as well or not? Not really.
There was social media. So
I don't want to overage you then, Mark.
Yeah. I'm only.
Was the internet a thing yet then?
I'm slightly under 80, Robin. So no, we did have social media. So we were able to keep in touch, but it wasn't that easy.
No.
So she would have to go to like an internet cafe to get in touch. So we couldn't contact her at any time, really. So it wasn't always that easy to do it. And having said that, years ago, it would have been, well, you would have had to wait several weeks for a letter, so it was great to keep in touch. But I can still remember that feeling of panic that just struck me out of the blue at the airport. Like, whoa, I can't stop this.
I'm not looking forward to that.
I can't do anything. But the thing about it is that sort of the bark of letting go is worse than the bite really. So I think once you actually settle into it, there's that initial emotional impact. Then you settle into it.
Was it the same with Billy?
And you get a bit more used to it. Yeah. Billy went off to the first time he left home was to university, so in Dundee, and again I think I recognise what you say, Robin, about the empty house. Then it's not like you get back and there's another child there, but actually you get back and there are no children there. It's an empty house.
That has some benefits, though.
So that's
like,
good.
Like you have all the cups are in the kitchen.
Yeah.
There's no little black rubber bits from AstroTurf all over the floor of the hall. There's lots of benefits to that.
Now, in my mind, mentally, when the kids fly the nest, it's like, right, I'm going to make a games room. Like, it's that kind of like redeeming the rooms. But obviously, in the modern world, kids don't typically go off to university, necessarily get married, and then, kids often come back. I myself went back home for a year at 23, saving up for a house. Yeah. So have you kept their rooms? Like, how, or have you just been like, no, let's move on?
No, we've kept their rooms. In fact, we've just done some decoration work on their rooms, which actually was strange. One, essentially, you think, why wouldn't you do that when they're around? But of course, it's a lot harder to move your family. If your home's not huge, and our home's not a particularly huge home at all, it's very hard to make that all work and fit that into everyday life and what I call the operational years, which is very much when you've got kids that are teenagers, it is the operational years. You're just functioning sometimes. So when they left, a feeling I had, which I haven't spoken about much, but I definitely know it was there, was this real desire to make rooms that would be very welcoming for them to come back to. And I also wanted them to feel that it was their room still. So I think that's really important. I'm not sure quite how one decides whether they've left or not. I think they like to keep a little bit of a foot in the camp. It's a bit of a helpful for them. And you deep down know there's nothing guaranteed about this stuff. It doesn't quite work as in... Like Darby, of course, came back because of COVID. She came back halfway through. She didn't want to be back at that point in many ways, so that was a bit harder for her. But so I think we've made an effort with their rooms, or we're making an effort with their rooms to make them something that they would feel like they were home.
So you haven't put a bowling alley in there?
No.
How do you find it when they come back? Because they do come back, don't they?
Yeah.
I know that because the kids have left, but they keep coming back, which is great. But it's a change again to the dynamic of the household. How do you find that, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to make me sound... I don't really mean it in the truest sense, but of course, as your children get older, they become a bit like... It feels like you've got house guests that are staying over more than the weekend. And what I mean is, you've got two adults, or we had two adults in the house now in addition to us. And you feel that in every way because, of course, these are now adults. And so these guys are making decisions. They've got a huge amount of autonomy about their lives. And you feel that house guest element is what I mean. And obviously my children, I love them dearly. So, so when they come back, you feel the presence of adults in your home, additional to yourself. You know, your little routines, your little things will be the way that you left them. You know, the TV channel will be the way you left it. The I don't know, if you've got some sort of music playlist like Spotify, that will be on the music you left it on. When they come back, that all gets thrown up in the air a bit, doesn't it?
Mine's permanently on Moana at the moment. So.
Oh, is it? Well, yeah, well, you get that the other side, don't you? So you get that the other end of parenting, don't you?
Yeah.
I missed the Rugby World Cup final because My daughter wanted to watch some program, so it's painful, isn't it?
It is.
That is one of the things you notice, actually, isn't it? When they leave home, you can get to watch what you want on TV,
Yeah,
and you realise how
totally.
much they've dominated the television for years.
They dominate a lot of things, don't they? In a good way. It's a good way, isn't it? But they are.
Yeah.
It is like having.
Yeah.
Well, it is true because there's 2 adults in the home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or however many adults you've got.
That's true. Yeah, and you want them to keep coming back, don't you? That's that. I mean, it's lovely, and really enjoy it. But there are mugs left all over the house. It's like a whirlwind sometimes when they arrive back, but then when that's all gone, they've packed up again and gone away again. Then I think I certainly feel a bit of a feeling of a loss again, almost. Actually, I begin to miss that. So it's the transitions I think are often more difficult in and out. I'm thinking about when you start letting go, because we're talking about letting go, and we're focused a bit on older age groups when they go off to work somewhere or university or whatever. But I'm thinking, do we start to let go at a very early stage? When is it? When do we start to let go? Stephen, you've got young children. Are you letting go already, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, we have. I think we mentioned this in a recent episode, but I think there's lots of small letting go moments, isn't there? So, leaving them at creche in our church is like other people looking after them. Bye. And then just hope she behaves, hope she does us proud and doesn't have any meltdowns and all the rest of it. I guess school is a massive one then. Like, it's all incremental, isn't it? So it's not like you go from having them with you all the time and then they leave. Like, they go off to school, they suddenly get a peer group. So I'm probably have a doing this and working for Care for the Family is probably giving me a better anticipation of it. I mean, early when Imogen was a few weeks old and I said, man, I'm up with her like half the night doing shifts. And you said, what I wouldn't give to, just have a night where I had Meg as a baby again, just be there and hold her. And I was like, oh man, that's good perspective. Yeah. So I think that's always kind of in there for me. I'm probably more self-aware than the average person would be anyway, just because of what I do. But yeah, there's definitely like pangs of, like she's gone off to, she'll be in nursery next year in April, and that's going to be another thing. So yeah, I guess it's a good system where it isn't just them with you all the time and then they leave. It's like you get used to it, I suppose. Is that true? Do those incremental steps make it easier? Going off to school, having friends, having a sleepover, whatever it might be?
I think they do. I don't know about you, Robin, but I think they do make it easier. But it feels like there are some very significant moments of letting go that are bigger impact than others. So going to school for the first time, or transitioning from primary school to secondary school, those where you're really, in primary school, you can still be quite involved in their education and the social stuff around school. They get to secondary school and actually they don't want you involved anymore, and so there are some real transitional moments, I think, where it impacts greater. How about you, Robin?
I think there would definitely be some bigger moments, and I think there is something when you have those moments that you want to lean into them and maximise them, and that's one of the things I think I've learned is when you have those bigger moments, those are the moments you can really do stuff with your relationship with your child, however old they are, that you can't in other moments that are so small and inconsequential you don't notice them. So maybe we can come back to that in a minute. But I was going to say as well, I wonder whether when your children leave, you have those moments you just talked about when they go to school the first time, or when they, I don't know, you go out for the evening, they're babysat and they're maybe still awake or whatever. They notice it as much as you do. I think as they get older, there will be a pang at that moment that you drive away and leave them, or they've got some level of independence they've not had before when maybe, was it Meg, got on the plane to India? But I think there's a moment quite quickly after that where they're not thinking about you at all. They're not thinking about you at all.
That's
they're
scary,
thinking about their life. You're the one that's left thinking. So I think there's a preparation for them to go, but there's actually a preparation for you to cope with it and realise that actually a lot of the emotional journey is you. Because to them, you've just been their parent. You've always been the same age, the same body size roughly. They don't really think of it like that. Whereas, as you say, these are the ones that you've held and comforted and cared for right from the beginning, and you've seen them now become people who are taller than you, who, if they're, depending on their nature, think they can beat you up or take you down or whatever, in a play fight. So it's a total change. You see what I mean?
I really identify with what you've been saying, because I remember when I left home, and I think it was a few years later, and I was talking to my mum, and she said, "Oh, your dad really struggled when you left home." And it was a bit of a shock to me.
Yeah.
What?
I didn't give a moment's thought.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
And it was because, and she said particularly Saturdays, because he used to manage football teams I played for 10 years. And so so we always spent Saturdays together playing football. And when I left home, that ended. And he felt
You
it
didn't even look
then.
back, Mark, and there your dad was.
I didn't even think about it, really.
Man.
Never even comprehended that this would have an impact on him, which is strange, isn't it? But and then we then find ourselves in their shoes, and we sort of sometimes expect our kids to be more sensitive than we were in many ways. But actually, that's just part of letting go, isn't it? And them gaining some independence.
I think it is those daily
a good
routines that I can imagine missing the most. So even now, like every morning, I go and get Imogen, bring her into the room, and I'll do that with Lottie when she's out of our room. Go downstairs, make a cup of tea, bring it up. Imi has warm milk. We have a cup of tea. And I don't know when that's going to stop, but like even that routine, we probably won't be doing when they're like 10 and 12. So I think there's probably things in the routine, like playing football on a Saturday, that will suddenly dissipate without warning, where she just won't want to come into our room in the morning. So I think even with the routines thing, I imagine there's things that you just do that suddenly stop without warning. Did you have that at all?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that, isn't it? Because I mean, it definitely does happen. But there's always something else to take its place. It feels like almost. It feels like a bit of a whirlwind of childhood.
True.
That you just kind of move on. I think when you think and reflect back on it, you realise actually, I used to write whenever I went away with work. I would write a little note for the children, and I'd leave it under their pillow at night, and they'd find the note and they'd read it. And sometimes I'd write them letters from somebody called the Story Master. So they'd write their stories, they'd send it off to the Story Master, and he'd send something back telling them how good it was. Now, when I look back at those notes, they make me feel quite emotional, really, that we could have that fun. I don't know, and that's why.
Interesting.
I bet I was thinking, I bet you can't remember.
No, why your point is really good, because we just slide into a different phase of life. But actually, now you mention it, I can almost feel a sense of, that's lost now. I won't be able to do that.
Well, that's exactly what I think with.
Yeah.
So, I do a monthly daddy-daughter date, and I take out the girls independently. Go for a coffee, and now with Amy, it's stuff like I took her to the arcade last time because she's getting a bit more developed and can do more. And we take a selfie every single time. So I've got a selfie of her at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, right through to, nearly 3 now. But I'm so aware that there's going to be a month, there's going to be a first month at some point where she's not there to take a selfie. And the first month we miss, it's like, oh no.
Well, I think there are two things with those. I think one, you do get the ones that just creep up and you don't even realise, you can't even remember when it stopped. Then there are other moments when it hits you suddenly and you are really aware. So for example, with my son, I played a lot of FIFA with my son. I did try playing it a couple of times after he left.
You had a cup, didn't you? What was it called?
I can't remember. I can't even remember the cup name. We did used to have a cup of Snickers.
That's it.
Something to do with winning.
There was
Snickers.
something to do with Snickers.
But the thing about it was, I remember. I remember. I think it might have been actually. I was talking to Rob, obviously Rob Parsons from Care for the Family, and I was talking to him about it, and I said, I reckon I've got about 18 months left of FIFA. What I didn't know at that moment, though, was actually I only had 18 hours left. Something then happened in Jake's life where it took him suddenly hugely distracted for a season, and FIFA just went. I mean, it went in 18 hours, not 18 months.
Wow.
And it was such a shock to me. Now, actually, that huge distraction in his life just disappeared again, some months later, and FIFA came back for another season, and it may come back when he comes back home. But it, you know what I mean? And that took me really by surprise, because that is the point that that just happens like that. That's life, isn't it?
Man. Right. So, Rowan, every episode now, we're starting to, just to get to know our guests a little bit better, ask a series of quick fire questions. There's not many, and there's nothing there to kind of trip you up or anything. but just give us a little bit of a window into who is Robin Vincent. Have you come up with like a theme song for this or anything yet, Mark?
I haven't, Stephen. I'm working on it, so bear with me.
That'll be one for series 3. All right, so Robin, can you tell us, what is your favourite song?
Piano Man by Billy Joel.
Right, favourite book?
This is going to shock everybody, I suspect, well, not everybody, like Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen.
Wow, that has shocked me.
Yeah.
Okay, your favourite...
That feels like that should be unpacked.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that, definitely.
None of this needs to have scrutiny.
I'm an unashamed Pride and Prejudice fan.
Wow, very good.
There's lots of quality in that story.
Can I interrupt this process? Because I was once in a group, an English literature course, and we were studying Jane Austen, and it was a whole class of women and me, and I said that I thought Jane Austen was overrated. Boy, I was almost lynched.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm feeling a bit hesitant saying it to you now, Robin, as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
You won't be coming back now, Mark. Thanks for that.
Sorry,
Right.
I've just ruined the quick fire questions, haven't I?
Favourite teenage mutant hero turtle?
I've no idea. They never even entered my frame of reference.
Favourite TV show?
Can't really think I've got one particularly. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Favourite actor?
Tom Hanks.
Favourite mobile phone provider?
What? O2.
Okay. Your favourite type of nut?
Oh, Brazil nut, I think. Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah.
And your favourite Pride and Prejudice character?
Mr. Darcy.
There we go. And that
Wow.
was the quickfire roundup.
Fantastic. That was a very mixed quick fire.
It was, yeah, and it wasn't as
Section.
quick as we might have hoped.
No,
There we go.
sorry, that was my fault. I interjected with a story, wasn't I? I'm still reeling a little bit from the Pride and Prejudice, to be
Yeah,
honest, and
yeah.
Mr. Darcy
But
as
what
well.
we are
I'm still-
finding that feature
so-
is unearthing things that we wouldn't have otherwise found
Yeah,
out.
It is,
exactly.
yeah, some
Yeah.
deep
So there we go.
secrets. Yeah.
I'm unashamed of
Yeah,
it as
clearly.
well. Yeah.
Good.
It's brilliant.
How do you bring this back on track? No, one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking was I remember with my kids when I was teaching them to ride a bike, and it was quite interesting because I taught Meg first because she's the eldest, and it took weeks. And I was running along, holding the saddle, keeping her on the bike. She'd be falling off into hedges, and it was a whole long and agonising process of teaching her to ride a bike, and eventually letting go and allowing her to ride. And then I remember a few years later taking Billy, and we went down to the park because there was grass there, and he got on the bike and taken the stabilisers off. I held the saddle and I said, okay, let's go. And he said, Dad, can you let go, please? And I said, son, if I let go, you'll fall off. And he was like, no, Dad, I want you to let go. I was like, you sure? Because, you know, it might hurt, you might struggle. He said, no, let go. So I let go of the bike, and off he sailed first time, riding his bike.
No way.
Perfectly balanced. It was fine. And you know what? Part of me felt some loss there as well, because I thought, this isn't how it's meant to be. There's meant to be a bit of a struggling process of letting go. It's meant to be a bit longer than this. There's meant to be ups and downs. It's meant to be something we can talk about for a number of weeks. And I'm just wondering whether it is different for different children, and whether you've found that with your two, Robin.
Well, I guess I probably have. If I think about it for a bit, I'm sure I have. I was just thinking as you were speaking, you've hit upon, though, a really good principle in terms of letting go. It's not a one-way decision. It's a two-way decision. It's a relationship, isn't it? So, you know, I don't know if you covered this before on this podcast, but there's a lovely little way of understanding the stage of parenting you go for when you're in the letting go stage, because you go from coaching, really, to consultant. That's what happens. You know, certainly in those early years of them growing, you become a bit more of a consultant. You get called in emergencies or whatever. But when they're in the context of being more emotionally and physically dependent upon you become a coach in those teenage years. And I think we can often think that the decision of when that coach to consultant happens is our call. Like you said, you know, coach is you're teaching her to ride the bike. Consultant is you're watching her and saying, oh, turn a bit. But they make those decisions as well, don't they? And actually it's our ability, I think, as the parent to kind of try and spot when that is happening. And again, I use that phrase, lean into it and let them begin to make those, you know, that call for us a bit, you know? Yeah. It's a bit like it goes from... I say it like this, you go from discussing things to another way of you almost need to become a much more of a person when you're letting go of your children of discovering. In other words, you're asking them stuff more than ever. Whereas when we're a bit younger, you're discussing stuff, coaching them, giving strong advice. When they're now gone, and I don't know if you find this now, you're asking them more questions and trying to unpack stuff, what's going on by listening. It's just a different sort of process. But I think you have to recognise, or we have to recognise that they choose that stage as well.
Probably
as
more
us.
than us.
Yeah, I think they probably do more than us. You're absolutely right. And one needs to hear the signals from them saying, this is a consultant moment now, Dad, not a coaching moment. Do you know what I mean? Because they're not going to use that language, obviously.
Yeah. So the whole transition is obviously, it's a massive thing. And I think I would hazard a guess that most dads don't think about it too much in the moment. But if there's people listening or watching this, and this would probably be helpful to get some sort of insight from both of you, what would you say to someone like me or someone with, a kid who's 10, like in terms of, because I bet you have times where you look back and be like, man, it was so sweet when they were just around, and there's probably some benefits now to having a bit of independence back, but what would you say to dads to make the most of those, what can be only 18 years, which is a pretty short amount of time actually? Like how do dads make the most of that time when the kids are at home?
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because everybody's situation is so different. And what I mean by that is some people just don't have the luxury of all the time in the world anyway, just because of the nature of the circumstances. There might be parenting alone, or there might be just a particularly challenging job or other circumstances. So I think it's a hard one to sort of say, maximise your time with them in one sense, because I'm not sure that's it. I think to overuse that phrase maybe, but lean into every moment, maximise the moment that you're in to as much as you can, but recognise that pretty much every moment will come to the end, but a new season then begins. Because, of course, I'm still their dad now, and I'll still be their dad for as long as they're around or I'm around. And I think it's really important to recognise, therefore, that my role now, I actually remember when they left or began leaving, Hannah and I talked about it, and we had a bit of a discussion about the importance of my role now being maybe even more important than ever for them as a person to go to, as a person for advice. So I think when you're the age you're in now, you have to maximise every moment, record every memory as best you can, but recognise that every season will come to an end, and as it were, grieve that season, but enjoy the next one if you have one.
I think the memory thing is massive actually, because we Beck and I have a shared notes app, and we stick in things that like Imi has said at certain points. Little phrases like "what have you done now" was one about 6 months ago. All of a sudden, what have you done now? And we're like, that's hilarious, like this 2-year-old's coming out with but what we don't do is record routines and things that are like, so even like you forgetting the name of the Snickers cup, it's like it's those little things where it's like, actually that's really good stuff to record as well as the things they say, because it's like, can you remember when we used to do this? Because there's probably stuff I've already completely forgotten about.
Yeah, it's like a train you can't stop, isn't it? And but you just got to enjoy the view wherever you're at on the particular journey, and you can keep trying to stop it, but you can't. And I agree with you, Robin. It's just about living in the moment, really, isn't it? And making the most of the moment. And some of those things will fall, we're quite profound in the moment, but will fall from the memory, and you might never remember them, but you'll still have the impact of them on the relationship, because you said it's all about relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's just, I agree with you, it's living in the moment, really. I'm just wondering about, once the kids have gone, what should you do to fill that gap almost, Robin? Is there anything, is there particular interest that you've taken up and developed more, or spent more time doing something that you never had the opportunity to do? How do you fill, I'm thinking of my dad on Saturday afternoons when I'm gone and we're not playing football. How do you fill the gap?
Yeah. Well, can I, just before I do that, just go back as well about the whole moment thing as well. A lot of the things our children remember are not the sort of magical moment where you took them to some treat, or it's often other moments which are actually much more everyday life, or much more, some of them are actually quite difficult moments, but they remember those in a more powerful way. So I was only going to say, sometimes we can get too caught up in
the
event or leisure or pleasure and all this kind of stuff, when actually some of it is life, and letting them see you walk through life and do that together. I think with the gain, as it were, is obviously, again, depending on your circumstances, you know, anybody listening might be married or not married and just have a network or friendship or particular interests. You've got this incredible opportunity really to prepare and recognise you can actually enjoy those things, and you get some gain. You get some of your, I want to say, some of your life back. I'm not sure that's
freedom,
necessarily,
yeah.
Some of your freedom, some of your autonomy back, some of your diary back, and so for Hannah and myself, we talked about that a lot as it was coming. We made preparation. We knew that our kids, we were anticipating, would leave us. And so we talked a lot about what would be left, what would remain, and put what remained, as it were, into order. And so for us, we were really focused on our relationship and our friends and our interests and the things that we were looking forward to doing. And we talked a lot about that and made preparations for that. And I think you can do that in advance. And I think that's a good thing, again. Because it's a bit like focusing on the positives, isn't it, as well as the loss.
Yeah, that's a really, really wise advice. Robin, we always, as we come to the end of the Dad Cave podcast, we always ask our guests if they could pass one thing on to their children. It could be an object, it could be a value, a principle, it could be a hobby or an interest. What would it be? So what would you pass on to Darby and Jake? Now, I know you're a man of faith, so automatically you would say you'd like to pass on your Christian faith. Your favourite object might be the Bible, but if it would take those as a given, what else would you like to pass on to your children?
I think I would want to pass on the importance of living by values, not by expediency, not by just convenience, but living your life by values and having the courage and the confidence to be yourself and live according to those values. And I think if I could put that into my children and let them become adults with that, that would be an absolute delight for me.
Yeah, lovely. And I know that you have, before we started filming today, you mentioned a poem, and I don't know whether you could just say that poem now, because I think it would be a really lovely way to finish the podcast. Yeah.
Well, obviously I'm Chief Executive Care for the Family, and so it would feel wrong not to mention a Care for the Family book, The 60-Minute Father. But at the end of The 60-Minute Father, Rob speaks about the goal, as it were. And the goal is, in many ways, is the topic of conversation today. You want to enjoy your kids, and we know enough in Care for the Family, know not everybody sees their kids become adults. But where we do, and we see our kids become adults, we want them to go, we want them to be independent, we want them to be mature, wise, and all these things. So there's this letting go process. And at the end of the 60-Minute Father, he says, our goal, therefore, is effectively to raise adults. That's really what he's saying. And the poem goes like this. It's talking about the moment, actually, it's Meg and the bike ride, really. It's talking about teaching a daughter to ride a bike. And it says, tomorrow I will run behind, arms out to catch her. She'll tilt and balance wide of my reach till distance makes her small. And I'll stop and know that to teach her I had to follow. But when she had learnt, I had to let go. And one day with my daughter, maybe not, but one day with my daughter, one day, maybe she'll get married and there'll be another moment of letting go. And maybe again with my son, he'll get married and there'll be another moment. And there'll be other moments again and again and again and again in life, won't there? But every time it's that moment you have to stop and recognise you got to let them go.
Yeah. What a perfect place to finish on. Robin, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been brilliant, hasn't it, Stephen? Once again, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And that was the Dad Cave. So thank you for listening or watching. Please join us next time.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed that or found it helpful, please do click the like button. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about all our latest videos. Finally, if you're in a position right now to support Care for the Family, you can do so following the link in the video description. As a thank you, we'll send you a load of resources for you and your family. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.